Yes, and Ephesians, pursuing God's heart, Ephesians chapter 4, just want to take us right into the middle of a paragraph, chapter 4, verse 20. So this paragraph, he's talking about the transformation that occurs when people come to know Jesus, when people get saved. And he goes through this progression, starting in verse 17, saying, look, I don't want you to walk or live the way the Gentiles do. Then he gives some statements about their minds, understanding, ignorance, and then he gives the root issue. And the root issue in all of the way that they live, the way that they think, the root issue is due to the hardness of their hearts. Become callous, give themselves up to sensuality, greedy to practice every kind of impurity. Their hearts are bad, therefore everything flows from there. But then right in the middle, the hinge point, he makes a unique statement. He says, but that is not the way you learned Christ. And for the rest of the paragraph, he works his way out from that point in terms of, again, affecting not just the desires, but then the spirit of the mind, and then the way that you live. But he says in verse 20, that is not the way you learned Christ. Now, I remember a conversation years ago, maybe 10 years ago, with a friend up in Scotland, sitting in a coffee shop. And he was talking to me about Ephesians because he'd studied it deeply, and I was really impacted by that conversation. Thank you, Mark. And he said, he pointed out that learned Christ, this is the only place in all of ancient Greek, classical Greek, Old Testament translation into Greek, or New Testament, as in all Greek, the only place where learned is followed by a person. Usually it's a subject, right? You learned a subject, or you learned a skill. You learned to play the guitar, or you learn mathematics. But here it says, this is not the way you learned Christ. And that's a unique and an unusual way of stating it. And it makes me think, as I'm looking at this paragraph, that at the core of the transformation that occurs when we become a Christian, at the very core of it, just like this is at the very core of this paragraph that moves from outside to in and from inside to out, at the very core of it, it's not actually a set of truths. It's not a set of life skills. It's not even a set of commitments we make. At the very core of becoming a Christian is learned Christ. It's an encounter with a person. And it's as we encounter Christ that we are transformed from the inside out. I don't know if maybe sometimes the way we talk about Christianity, maybe we diminish it to something less than that. We turn it into a believe in this creed, or say this prayer, or make this commitment, or choose to live this way. All of those kind of things. Some of those are the fruit, but none of those are the core. The core of it is an encounter that is transformational with Christ himself. Remember, that's how you learned Christ. That's the heart of the gospel. And so whatever else we may be thinking about in terms of what Christianity is, let's be sure to thank God that we've met Christ and that we've encountered him, and that relationship with him is the very center of the whole transformation he wants to do in our lives.